like a man who was present, he'd say, I don't have to make a speech. You have made the speech for me. Good evening, everybody. What an honor and privilege it is to be here. And I want to begin by doing something that's risky. I want to thank certain persons. I can't thank everybody. But I really want to thank Leith Dunn and to join with her, Judy Willoughby, who gave me such nurturing support. Did I call you Willoughby? Judy, I'm allowed. Judy Wedderburn, who gave me such nurturing support in preparing this publication. Thank you so much. I also want to single out my JMB family, not just because of my recent husband, but family meaning team members at JMB who are represented here this evening. I see Colleen and Benet. Thank you. Thank you very much for being here. And I have some sisters who have traveled from Orange Bay, which is just outside of Lucille, from White House in Westmoreland, and from Montego Bay. Where are they? All three of them drove in especially for this event. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And they're driving back tonight. Women driving back tonight. And that's okay. Is Jean Wilson here? I want to thank her too. Is she here? Maybe she couldn't make it, but I'm going to deal with her poem a little later on. But I just want at the outset to say that in listening to that introduction of me, that I really realize I've lived a long time. And I still feel there is so much more I could have done and plan to do. But, you know, nothing happens without support and without team. And although as a public person, very public person, I'm often singled out as the person who did this or that, I just want to hail all of the people in this audience who I have ever touched, who have touched me, who have worked with me in all of those things you highlighted. Thank you all so much. I see Lynette Vassell. Every time I see Lynette Vassell, I want to kneel down. You know why? When we did the maternity leave law, and some of us democratic socialists, used to be called mouthwater socialists, couldn't manage it. We couldn't cross it. From time to time. You know, you just get tired of the struggle, and you know you can't go no further. And you see people like Lynette Vassell and our team, them just clock in, you know, and make you know, say you have to stand up, right? And I always appreciate that, Lynette, because everywhere I go, I say it, I acknowledge it, because talking about rebel women, we'd better, those of us who have forgotten what it took to get to where we are today, where they're talking about women in the army, women in the police, women driving truck, women as marine divers. Those things are people, women as construction workers, things that are taken for granted now. We better understand that unless we are willing to step it up, I don't want to say tune up the thing, but unless we are willing to step it up, we're not going to get anywhere. And we have to be able to ally with all different kinds of persons in order to get there. Some like Lynette will make sure you don't go to sleep on the job. Others like me will make sure that you talk to all the strategic, all the right persons. There was a Cabinet Wives Association, for example, which was formed while I was there. And when the maternity leave law was looking a little tricky, I had to call a special meeting. You know why? Because the cabinet had to pass it, and it was looking very dicey. So the women were instructed accordingly. So you have to use what, you know, you understand what I'm saying, that the rebel woman has to be prepared to stand up, take the criticism, take the licks, but stand up nonetheless. Any woman who has ever been in a struggle for women's rights will tell you that. There is no other way to succeed. And when I look at organizations in the financial sector all over, young women just, emerging, beginning to emerge in the political parties, although we're still not seeing enough of them in the parliament. But everywhere you can see another young woman emerging. Remember, you are standing on the shoulders of women, like the women, some of the women in this room who gave up everything, husband, picnic, whatever it took, we gave it up so that this generation could walk the way they're walking today. Lucille Mathurin-Mair came into my life soon after I married Michael, and he instructed us to revive the women's movement in the party. And you know, in preparing this lecture, I was remembering how she just mentored me automatically. You know, that's what Lucille did. She just take you on, you know. You didn't realize she's taking you on. She involved me in everything, all some of the things I couldn't understand. You know, she was telling me about feminism and women's rights, and I was very open, but, you know, half the time I didn't know what she was talking about. But I was listening. I was listening, and I was willing to follow her because she was a very easy leader to follow. She was a supreme negotiator. I watched her during those struggles in getting Nanny to become a heroine. And I said, Lucille, you'll never see that in Jamaica. I just never knew it was possible. But she negotiated with people who thought it was rubbish. She negotiated, she was very strategic, very calm, not like Lynette, very, or me for that matter. That's why I tell you, Lynette is more like Lucille now. But in those days, you know, young and fiery like myself. But Lucille was very charming. You noticed her when she walked into a room. And she did what she had to do very quietly. But she was doing it nonetheless. And she knew how to pick out a leader, which is an attribute that leaders must have. You must know where to look for leaders, find them, and nurture them no matter what. If you're a leader, you can't pick out a leader, trust me. You're not going anywhere fast. So she was a remarkable woman of substance and scholarships who shared her gifts freely with all of us here in Jamaica, the region, and indeed the world. Who else but a Lucille Mathurin-Mair, a visionary, could see Nanny as a national heroine long before it even happened. She could just pierce through that current reality that was in front of her that said Nanny was not real. Up to last week, somebody called me, a mother called me to say her children got something to do in school on Nanny, and they wanted her to ask me if Nanny was real. That was last week. So it still goes on. Now, because I'm into transformation, I want to ask you if you would just almost play a little game with me. Listen to this lecture from a particular perspective. It's one of the principles of transformation, that you can choose how to listen. And for the purposes of today's event, I'm going to ask you to listen from a particular vision which I've created for this event. Is that okay? What if you said no? This vision is for an engendered society where Jamaica is seen as a space within which women and men work together for transformation, to overturn subordination wherever it exists. This is a space within which women and men, as partners, experience extraordinary relationships and create a system of equality and equity across gender, race, class, ethnicity, leading to sustainable development for everyone. Just listen from that space and let us see what we can create at the end. As I said earlier, the vision is based on some of the core principles of transformation, like listening and how to listen, and having a clear idea of what we want to create once we have cleaned up that space. We want to create honesty, I remember Anderson-Duncan saying to me is she here by the way? Saying to me one day, what if Jamaica could just tell the truth for 24 hours? All of us, not those people, but all of us in this room, tell the truth for 24 hours. So we need honesty. We need to really get comfortable with accountability for ourselves and for others. We are very uncomfortable with keeping our word and being accountable. Participation, not just some people, but all of us, recognizing that we have a voice, and maybe the voice that we need to hear in the moment is that voice that chooses silence. And then, of course, taking action. These are just some of the principles of transformation. So throughout the next 20 or so minutes, Dr. Dunn, we're going to look at some of the achievements. And by the way, the publication is available on sale at $500 outside. So don't even check it now because I'm kind of speaking to it. But the details are there. This journey in the last 50 years of political independence for gender equality has often been traumatic, conflictual, but also there were some joyous celebrations. The reflections provide insights into the journey, the strategies used, and reveal some breakthroughs and achievements, some of which remain today and which we still need to overcome. I remember a woman leader of the Cuban Revolution, telling me once when she was visiting Jamaica that her children were very upset with her because of Guantanamo Bay and the U.S. presence there. And she was somebody who was actually in the Sierra Maestra with Fidel. And she said, I looked at them and I said, we had to leave something for you to do. So our generation is definitely leaving something for the younger generation to do. So the lecture asserts that in order for the women's movement to advance to another level, women must take action that doesn't deal with reform, but deals with transformation at the personal, institutional, and national levels. It also argues that in order to achieve this goal, we need to wipe the slate clean and in what I call that pure, sacred space, create the engendered society that we want for ourselves and generations yet unborn. In wiping the slate clean, we also need to take a systemic approach and radically confront patriarchy. That's a subversive verb. Radically confront patriarchy as a system of male domination which fosters inequality and underdevelopment. Because patriarchy is an ideology that affords power, status, and privilege to mankind. And I mean mankind. It can be accepted, and sometimes accepted, as the norm for both males and females. It is deeply entrenched not only in our society, but worldwide. Because of this, it is in our interest as women to find, agree, and adopt new and more effective ways of negotiating gender equality and the empowerment of women inside of that patriarchal system. Now, don't fool this time. For every now and then, one woman get through. Can get through as prime minister, can get through as whatever. And you say, oh, the thing is working. But in order for patriarchy to perpetuate itself, that has to happen. So that some of us get not only fooled, but many of us as women collude in that system of domination and subordination. You can clap that. People's access to basic human rights are influenced by race, by gender, social class, particularly in Jamaica, the rural, urban, what I'm calling dichotomy. That's rural and deep rural. Because of my husband, I'm working a lot in rural and deep rural Hanover. And everybody, certainly everybody who steps on this university campus should spend a year living and working in deep rural Jamaica. It would turn us around. The first time I was doing some house to house and I wanted to use the bathroom. And I said to the lady, may I use your bathroom? I should know better, you know what I'm saying that? Because I know that in the 70s we went a long way to get everybody water and everybody have toilet. And I'm saying, she said, just, me will cover you, me will cover you. Just go around the back this up. And before I know what was happening, about 4 big women just stand up in front of me. I must tell you that it felt very natural to just stoop and do what I had to do. But everybody should experience it. Seriously. Seriously. It turns you around, you know. You think that what we're talking about as problems in middle class and upper middle class Kingston. You need to see people who have to really, in 2012, get up and fight over water. You don't just go for water, you know. You fight over it and people die because of the fight. And they are surrounded by water. Hanover have the great river, you heard its name? Great River. The hotels have water, the people don't have water. The social class thing is alive and well in Jamaica. And it is still mainly women's role to make sure the water is provided, even if she send out the little boy and the little girl. It is her problem. Because remember now, the household is a site, S-I-T-E, of struggle, you know. If you want to see gender inequality, start at the level of the household, where woman's work is set and man's work is non-existent. To the extent that you see if the man help you, you say, thank you for helping me. I'm helping you, you know. You're not helping, you are doing something on behalf of the family, but he's being kind enough to help you. And some of them are kind enough, by the way, to help you. And we appreciate the help. But we want to get to the stage where, whether you're man or woman, your contribution is an equal contribution, and anybody can take it on. So Lucille-Mair was not any ordinary woman. And you know, I was going to say I got to know Lucille intimately, and I'll tell you why I use the word intimately. We went to a conference that was hosted by Janetta. Everybody who had Janetta Cole, who was then at Spelman College, where my daughter Sarah went. And we were staying in the house. She had just moved in, so everybody was kind of roughing it. And we went out to dinner the night. I was sitting in the front of the cab, and Lucille and some others were in the back. And the cab driver closed the door before Lucille was fully in, and she broke her leg. So for the week or two we were there, I became her nurse. And that's what I mean when I say I got to know her. Any of you who have had one leg out or even an ankle know that somebody have to bathe you. Somebody have to do everything for you. So poor Lucille, she just had to surrender to me and just make me do everything. So that kind of brought a closeness, a particular kind of closeness for us when I realized that here I was serving this great, really great woman. And it was my pleasure to serve her. So Lucille as rebel woman and other rebel women, many of them here, have made a significant contribution to understanding gender inequality and have done the research. One of the things, and it's in the book you will buy, that each of you will buy. I'm not going to deal with it now because I think the successes of the 1970s are well known. Often a maligned period, lasted from about 74 to 1980. Would you believe it's about 6 years? I don't know. 6 years. I think it's about 6 years. Because Michael Mann came to us in 72. 6 years? When you think of it, the way people talk, you think it was 100 years. But it was 6 serious years. When a number of Jamaicans, maybe a critical mass, decided they were going to overturn the balance of power in Jamaica. And that meant overturning the gender inequalities in Jamaica. So I'm very proud to have been a part of that period, no matter what they say, and every period has strengths and weaknesses. We talk about the weaknesses all the time. Today, I am affirming the strengths of the 1970s. That is when Lucille Mair, almost as the only woman in Jamaica, not the only, but definitely the person who led the process for gender equality, came into my life. I think it was either 1973 or 1974. She was a visionary leader, as I said earlier. She was also an institution builder. It's one thing to be a visionary leader, but the vision can remain just that, a vision. You have to begin now to create the institutions and to put in the implementation mechanisms to make sure the vision is realized. She was very good at that. Hence the Bureau, the Women's Desk and the Bureau of Women's Affairs, now about to become the Bureau of Gender Affairs with a male desk. Because if women and men don't start negotiating and talking and having conversations with each other, we really don't have much further to go. We had to start out, and we make no apologies for that. We had to start out with the focus on women. And in many ways, we still have to hold on to that woman-focused gender approach. But while we are doing that, we have to start getting male gender to listen and to understand. And in carrying out those conversations, if we are rebel women and transformation leaders, we have to first of all get rid of some of our own stuff. How many times have you been surprised by a man when you have the courage to tell him something straight and you just know him not going to take you on? And guess what? He'll take you on. He may even carry the conversation a little further. So that is some of the things we're going to have to consider. Not to weaken our movement, but to strengthen it. Because remember, the whole question about gender equality and equity is not an end in itself. We cannot have sustainable development without it. And we'll keep on getting the results we are getting, whether you're talking crime and violence, antisocial behavior, lack of respect. We're going to keep on getting it until we find a way to bring the genders together and work as partners. Since I'm throwing words, let me throw another one. When I had the privilege of meeting Fidel Castro the first time, I said that because I want you to know I met him more than once. We're having a conversation, just the two of us. And, as a communist, for him, the working class is a class that must triumph and lead. And he looked at me, and we were just chatting, and he said, Beverly, in English, he said, you think it is hard for the working class to conquer and achieve? I said, yes. He said, the only thing more difficult than that is the gender thing. Avex. Hear me, how could this progressive man be talking like this? I live to eat my words. He was right. It's very, very, as we can tell you, those of us who have been in the forefront of it. But today I want to really challenge us to step it up to a completely different level. Because if Jamaica ever needed women leaders and male leaders who are feminist-oriented, who understand the way patriarchy holds back not only women, but many men, time is now. So this 50-year milestone, we must really use it and use it well. And I hope beyond today, a group of us will be able to meet to really, some of us are doing it already, to be able to spell out, Joan, in specific terms, what we can use this space this year to do. This 50-year milestone. It's okay to put on the bandana dress and do the little thing. All that is nice, and it don't make the body uncomfortable. A group of us have to start making some people uncomfortable. Because that's when you know a breakthrough could be on the horizon. So let's make some people uncomfortable. Rebel women. Jimmy Cliff has a song about the rebel in me and the rebel in you. That's what I want to bring out. I want to bring out the rebel in me and look in your eyes and bring out the rebel in you. Because that is when we're going to get something done. Not just the nice part of us. You know that little part that just say, hey, how are you? But the grassroots part, like when you go in the hills of Hanover and them tell you straight. Them tell you straight, you know, the language, everything is very straight. They tell you like it is. You may not like it, because they use a number of words that we were brought up not to use, which are not used here. But they tell you straight onto your face, this is where we want, and we have to get it today. Because the picnic have to go to school and the whatnot. It's time we started to face each other, give each other honest feedback, instead of going around the corner and telling Leith about Lynette. I never do that, by the way. But going straight to Lynette. How about that? And I really want to pause here to get in trouble again and congratulate my friend, Carol Narcisse, for just stepping it up. It's a long time she's struggling, although she looks so young. But I just love how you step it up, Carol. I love your courage. It is something to be admired. It is something to be admired. I really want to sing there. And as she's sitting right there beside her, say, I'm in real trouble now. Caroline now. Caroline could go. Well, you passed courage. Because she stand up for the language. Because, the language, language, I could give a whole lecture on language, Language is so important. You take away a people's language. What do they have left? There's a beautiful story about Helen Keller. I don't know if you ever heard it. And she said she was like a clod of earth. Because, she went, I think, deaf and blind when she was 18 months old. So she was like a clod of earth until her teacher, who taught her sign language, came into her life. She said she was nothing. She had no emotion. She had nothing. She was just there. Somebody came and fed her. So she was a clod of earth. And when she was introduced to language through this teacher who taught her how to sign, she said language propelled her into life. That's how important language is. So take away a people's language, which is what many of us are doing in Jamaica, and then we expect to see human beings standing up and walking tall and having confidence and pride in themselves. Give me a break. So we salute you to Carol. Clap, Carol. So we have had a long, winding, torturous, all kind of journey. We have been labeled everything. Feminism became a bad word. If you are a feminist, it meant you were a lesbian. Ooh. Phew. That's the word. And we were called everything. Those of us in the forefront of the struggle will tell you, we're called everything. Because we're so involved in the struggle, many of us didn't spend enough time in our relationships. We had to choose. I always say it would be nice to have a conference of children who grew up in the 70s. The parents would have to go migrate somewhere else. I don't want to hear what they're saying at all. I'll never forget taking Natasha to the basic school one day, and it's so great, by the way, to see basic schools finally getting some attention. I can't believe it. In the 70s, when you talk about basic schools, no support, I mean, everybody's into it now. We may finally get somewhere in understanding that those first 5 years of a child's life are the most important, and we lose it at our own risk. From the mother conceives, the state has to come in and play a part, because guess what? They are going to end up in society, whether the parents can bring them up or not. No, so. So we better start to take an interest. But I took Natasha down to the basic school. She must have been about 3. And her father was there. She said, the children are all crowding around him, getting excited. And she kept saying, my daddy, my daddy. And he said something like, yes, darling, but I'm daddy for all the children. She says, no, you're my daddy. So I would like to see that conference where the children start to discuss these parents who were saving the world while they were, the word Sarah uses, peripheral. I'm not taking her on though. So the journey continues. The journey continues. I ask you to read the publication, comment on it. Let's take it a step further, because that's what it's here for. It's here to open up conversation. And during that period of these last 50 years, we were courageous enough to question everything. You know, some experts will tell you it's not the answer, it's the question. What are the questions you are asking? What are the questions I am asking? So we question everything. Everything was placed under a microscope. And the buzzword of the day was deconstruction. We're deconstructing everything. We questioned liberalism, structural adjustment, trickle-down theory. I remember Peggy Antrobus, who is another rebel woman, Peggy Antrobus showing me a cartoon where a group of business people were sitting around a table discussing investment, and a half-naked man was under the table. And the thing on the caption read something like, "I'm tired of being trickled down upon." We questioned our subordination, not only in right-wing groups, inside progressive groups. We questioned the Cartesian philosophy of either or. We decided we're not into no either or, because sometimes you can be in both. Then no, we took on something that really got us into some trouble. The Holy Bible. And a group of women started to look at women in the Bible and refused to accept that Jezebel was whatever them say and this one was whatever them say. They go back to the original language of the Bible and found out that many of these women were military strategists, warriors, and serious leaders, even when the men were present. Maybe I should say particularly when the men were present. We questioned the dichotomy between the so-called private and public sphere. And the example I gave earlier of children, that when a mother first conceives, when parents first conceive, you're welcome, that the state should step in immediately and take an interest. Immediately. Because there is no separation. It's an artificial boundary between the so-called private and public sphere. We question why was it that women's roles had to be based on our biology? Why did we have to be punished because we have that sacred gift of bringing children into the world? Why did that make us better nurturers? Why did that make us better housewives and helpers? Why? It just does not make sense, because these things are, as you know, social constructs. And gradually, ever so gradually, that subversive word I mentioned earlier, subordination, crept into our discourse. By the way, all that time, we're researching. We had reams of documents. I mean, it was that whole period from about International Women's Year and even earlier, right through, was a very busy and important time for us. So don't underestimate what you see happening to women today. Although we have a long way to go, never take any of those things for granted. Because 50 years ago, 40 years ago, as I said earlier, you would not see women in certain of those positions. And remember, a woman in position is just that. A woman in position. It's important. But again, it's the means to an end. Because a woman in position who doesn't have a feminist perspective, who doesn't have a gender perspective, is what a friend of mine called a woman in a man's suit. We are glad to have them there, As my mother would say, better than nothing. But guess what? We need to understand it for what it is. It's a woman in position. And many times for a woman to make it in the patriarchal world, she has to become a man. Not true? She chooses not to make anybody uncomfortable. And that is not the way of a rebel woman. Then we change the language. Humankind instead of mankind. They started doing things like sisters and brothers instead of brothers, and I also mean sisters. So we did the work. We insisted that the male-ordered, M-A-L-E, language of patriarchy be changed to include women as women and not as men. I don't know why men feel that we are comfortable when you say, when men are addressed and they say it includes women. But if you address an audience of women, as women, meaning men, they get very upset. And I love doing that when I say I'm talking to women, and by women I also mean men. It's not a nice feeling because, you know, really, some fundamental problems remain, and I know the 20 minutes gone, I'll soon finish. Fundamental problems remain. We still have a lot of work to do. That's why people of my generation have chosen not to retire. Working in a different... I thought I'd be retired. Not only am I not retired, I just got married to an interesting man. If you have a first marriage and it isn't working, do the second one when you're 70. I want to share a quotation from the 1995 Human Development Report. Moving towards gender equality is not a technocratic goal. It is a political process. It requires a new way of thinking in which the stereotyping of women and men give way to a new philosophy that regards all people, irrespective of gender, as essential agents of change. Patricia earlier talked about changing our thinking process because, where is she? Chatterley? Changing our thinking process because that is where it all begins. And I just want, many of you know the Carter Woodson quotation. I see Rupert Lewis here, and Maureen, Rupert, where is Rupert? The Carter Woodson quotation about if you can control a man's thinking. And instead of man, I've just put in woman. This is it. If you control a woman's thinking, you don't have to worry about her action. When you determine what a woman shall think, you do not have to concern yourself about what she will do. If you make a woman feel that she's inferior, you do not have to compel her to accept an inferior status, for she will seek it herself. If you make a woman think that she's justly an outcast, you do not have to order her to the back door. She will go without being told. And if there is no back door, her very nature will demand one. Right after that, I really felt I had to read Jean Wilson's poem. Is Jean here? Some of you know it. No more smiling. But it bears repeating, especially after that quote. No more meekly saying yes when my heart is screaming no. No more taming of my feelings so my power won't show. No more hiding my exuberance from disapproving eyes. No more watering down myself so my spirit won't rise. No more smalling up of me, pretending I'm not here. No more running from the music and the spotlight's glare. No more living in this prison, barricaded by my fears. No more turning and retreating in the face of new frontiers. Even as I'm speaking, I'm taking shape and form, harnessing my powers like a gathering storm. There is no obstacle so bold as to dare stand in my way. I'm taking back my life, and I'm doing it today. So the essence and spirit of these words challenge us to begin with transformation of self as woman, preparing us to take the lead in transforming households, relationships, communities, society. It begins with a new mindset, a new way of thinking about ourselves as descendants of slaves, a new way of thinking about ourselves of women and men, a new way of thinking about development, a new way of thinking about our organizations and our institutions. We need a new paradigm. We need a paradigm shift. The World Bank's publication, The State in a Changing World, reminds us in its analysis that what is needed is a fundamental rethinking of the roles and institutions and the interactions between citizens and government. I want to end with some notes about the rebel woman as transformation leaders. Some of it is repetitive, but it bears repeating. Rebel women as transformation leaders, therefore, must begin by realizing that they have to be the change they want to see in the world, as Gandhi so aptly put it. Finally, apart from anything else, this means an ongoing process of self-reflection and the willingness to transform ourselves in the same way we want to transform others. It requires us to rid ourselves of any prejudices, privileges, that's a big one, and assumptions that can act against our vision for engendering transformation. Rebel women as leaders of transformational processes must therefore lead by example and encourage. By the way, when I say women, I also mean men. And encourage team members to engage in this process of self-reflection to change our mindset. We have to be visionaries. You can't change anything if you just stay right where the thing is right here, so now. You have to be able to see something else, something cuts through all of that. So we have to have the capacity to motivate others to share the vision. Transformational leaders bring the future into the present and choose that future as a place to live from right here, right now. We have to develop the capacity to just listen to each other without judgment, with empathy. We have to encourage and allow others to participate. We must also hold ourselves and others accountable and therefore take responsibility for our actions. As transformational leaders, our actions must be guided and informed by research, especially doing gender, analysis of sex disaggregated data to identify the specific and differential needs and interests of both sexes and to better understand our relationships. Finally, transformation leaders must be unapologetically feminist, women and men, recognizing the subordination of women as a group and organizing to achieve equal rights for all women and vulnerable groups. This requires exceptional confidence, courage, resilience, and determination. Women will need to be willing to take a stand for what they believe in, and will have to understand that the personal is indeed the political. Sisters and brothers, in completing the past, we look to the future. Let me repeat. We bring that future into the present and allow it to determine our lives. So we end as we started with the vision. Jamaica as a space within which women and men work together for transformation to overturn subordination wherever it exists. A space within which women and men as partners experience extraordinary relationships and create a system of equality and equity across race, class, gender, leading to sustainable development for everyone. To execute this vision, who are we called upon to be? We're called upon to be visionary. We're called upon to be courageous. We're called upon to be resolute. We're called upon to have fixity of purpose and continuity of effort, as Norman Manley reminded us in the 1930s, which means we are called upon to have high levels of commitment. Indeed, we are called upon to be rebel women. Thank you very much.